The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers as I heard my wife's voice drift through our kitchen window. It was past midnight, and I was fixing the alternator on my pickup truck in the driveway, trying to save money on another repair bill. Jade thought I was asleep. "Judy, you don't understand," Jade whispered harshly to our 16-year-old daughter. "Your father is too safe. He fixes everything, plans everything, controls everything. Kellan makes me feel alive again. He's exciting, dangerous, unpredictable." I crouched lower behind the hood, my heart hammering against my ribs. "But Dad loves you, Mom," Judy replied, though her tone carried doubt. "Isn't that enough?" "Love isn't everything, sweetheart. Sometimes you need passion, adventure, someone who takes risks. Your father hasn't surprised me once in 20 years. Kellan showed up on his motorcycle last week and took me to that new casino 3 towns over. We stayed until sunrise." My hands clenched around the wrench. Kellan Brooks. I knew that name from Jade's gym stories, her new friend, who supposedly helped her with workout routines. The same friend who'd been calling her phone at odd hours for the past month. "So you're really leaving Dad?" Judy asked. "I already have, honey. I just haven't told him yet. Kellan found me an apartment downtown. Modern, sophisticated, nothing like this shabby house your father refuses to upgrade. We're moving this weekend." The wrench hit the concrete driveway with a sharp clang. I froze, waiting to see if they'd heard. After a moment, Jade continued. "Kellan says boring men like your father never change. They just get more boring. He's right. I need excitement in my life, not someone who comes home covered in motor oil, talking about factory quotas and pension plans." I'd heard enough. 20 years of marriage, and she was trading me in like an old car that had lost its shine. I gathered my tools quietly and slipped into the garage through the side door. The house felt different now, like a place I was visiting rather than living in. "My name is Asher Trevan, and I'm a mechanical engineer at the automobile factory on the edge of town. 40 years old, steady paycheck, reliable as sunrise. Everything Jade apparently found suffocating. I'd spent 2 decades being the man I thought she wanted. Responsible, dependable, safe. Turns out I'd been wrong about what she wanted all along. The next morning, Jade acted normal over coffee, discussing grocery lists and weekend plans, like she wasn't planning to abandon our marriage for a motorcycle-riding thrill-seeker. I played along, watching her lie with practiced ease. When she mentioned having lunch with her sister, I knew she was meeting Kellan instead. "Have a good day at work, honey," she said, kissing my cheek with lips that had probably been on his the night before. "You too," I replied, already planning my first move. At the factory, I couldn't concentrate on the production line diagnostics. My mind kept replaying Jade's words about excitement and danger. If that's what she wanted, maybe it was time to show her what those things actually looked like. During my lunch break, I drove to Jade's gym. Sure enough, Kellan's flashy red SUV sat in the parking lot, vanity plates reading "Thrills." The vehicle screamed midlife crisis, oversized tires, chrome details, and a sound system that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. I parked 3 spaces away and waited. 20 minutes later, they emerged together, Jade wearing workout clothes that looked more like evening wear. Kellan was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, muscular, wearing sunglasses indoors and a leather jacket in 80-degree weather. He kissed her right there in the parking lot, his hands roaming places that used to be mine. They drove off in separate cars, probably maintaining the illusion for anyone watching. I sat in my truck for another 10 minutes, letting the anger build into something useful. Then I walked over to Kellan's SUV with my pocket knife. 4 tires hissed their last breath onto the asphalt. I left a note under his windshield wiper. Regret usually starts here. Simple, clean, untraceable. That evening, Jade seemed agitated during dinner. Her phone buzzed constantly, and she kept glancing at it with worried expressions. "Everything all right?" I asked, cutting into the meatloaf she'd barely touched. "Fine." Just work stuff. She forced a smile. The museum is having issues with a new exhibit. Another lie. Jade worked as a curator at the local history museum, authenticating artifacts and managing collections. Steady, quiet work that she'd always claimed to love. Now, apparently, it was too boring, just like everything else in her life. Around 9 o'clock, Gordon from next door knocked on our front door. He was a retired postal worker with too much time and an unhealthy interest in neighborhood drama. "Evening, Asher," he said, holding up his phone. "Thought you might want to see this. Took it at the gym today when I was picking up my wife from her water aerobics class." The photo showed me walking away from Kellan's SUV, my face clearly visible. Gordon's timing was impeccable, as always. "Looks like someone had car trouble," Gordon continued with a knowing smirk. "Shame when that happens to such an expensive vehicle." "I'm sure it is," I replied evenly. "Thanks for stopping by, Gordon." After he left, I found Jade in our bedroom, packing clothes into a suitcase. No more pretense, no more lies. Time for honesty. "Going somewhere?" I asked from the doorway. She turned, her face flushed with guilt and defiance. "Asher, we need to talk." "About Kellan? About your apartment downtown? About how boring and safe I am?" I stepped into the room, noting which items she was taking and which she was leaving behind. "I already know, Jade. I heard you last night." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Then her expression hardened. "Good. That makes this easier. I'm done pretending to be happy in this suffocating life. Kellan offers me things you never could." "Like what? Excitement? Danger? Someone slashed his tires today. Is that exciting enough for you?" The color drained from her face. "You didn't." "Regret usually starts with small things," I said, echoing the note I'd left. "But it grows quickly when you make poor choices." She grabbed her phone and started dialing, probably calling Kellan to warn him. I didn't stop her. Let them both know I wasn't the harmless, predictable man they thought I was. "This isn't over," Jade said, her voice shaking with anger. "Kellan won't let you intimidate us." "I'm counting on it," I replied, and meant every word. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in public embarrassment. Jade moved out officially, making sure everyone in our small town knew she'd left her boring husband for someone more exciting. She paraded Kellan around like a prize, showing up at restaurants where she knew I'd be seen, posting photos on social media of their adventures. The worst part was watching Judy choose sides. My daughter started avoiding me, spending weekends at Jade's new apartment instead of home. When I tried to talk to her, she'd roll her eyes and make comments about me being controlling and unable to let go. "Mom says you're having trouble accepting that she's moved on," Judy said one evening when I picked her up from school. "She says you're acting creepy, following them around. Is that what she told you?" I kept my voice calm, but inside I was burning. Did she mention that she was seeing Kellan for months before she left? That she lied to both of us? That's different. She was unhappy. You never paid attention to what she needed. I wanted to explain that I'd worked double shifts to pay for her dance classes, that I'd fixed every broken thing in our house to save money for family vacations, that I'd been the one who stayed up with her when she had nightmares as a child. Instead, I just drove her to Jade's apartment and watched her walk away without looking back. At work, things got worse. Kellan had connections at the factory through his consulting business, whatever that meant. He started showing up in the break room, making loud comments about taking care of my ex-wife and how some men just couldn't satisfy their women. "Hey, Asher," he called out during lunch one day, his voice carrying across the crowded room. "Jade mentioned you're having trouble with the divorce papers. Need me to explain anything? I've been through a few myself." Laughter rippled through the room. Everyone knew my business now, thanks to Jade's need to justify her choices publicly. I'd become the town's cautionary tale about what happened when you let your wife get bored. "I'm managing fine," I replied, not looking up from my sandwich. That's good. That's good. Jade was worried you might do something desperate, like more tire slashing. His tone was mocking, designed to provoke a reaction in front of witnesses. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. The room went quiet. Kellan was bigger than me, younger, probably stronger, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He thought I cared about looking reasonable anymore. Kellan, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silence. You're right that I'm not exciting like you. I don't ride motorcycles or gamble until sunrise or steal other men's wives for entertainment, but there's something you should understand about boring men like me. I stepped closer, close enough to smell his expensive cologne and see the uncertainty creeping into his eyes. We're patient, we plan ahead, we think things through completely before we act, and when we finally decide someone has pushed too far, I smiled, the expression feeling strange on my face. Well, that's when things get really interesting. The confrontation ended there, but I could see I'd planted a seed of doubt. Kellan wasn't as confident walking away as he'd been walking in. That night, I received an anonymous email with an attachment. The sender address was clearly fake, but the content was real. Photos of Jade and Kellan together, taken weeks before she'd moved out. Someone else had been watching them, documenting their affair. The final photo showed them entering a law office together, Jade carrying a folder of documents. She'd been planning this for months, probably consulting lawyers about divorce strategy while still sharing my bed. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd expected. I'd been prepared for her to leave, but not for the calculated way she'd orchestrated everything. I forwarded the photos to my own lawyer, Ron Jeremy, a sharp-dressed man with a reputation for aggressive tactics. If Jade wanted to play games with legal strategy, she was about to learn that two could participate in that particular sport. The next morning brought another surprise. Gordon knocked on my door again, this time carrying a manila envelope. "More photos?" I asked. "Better than photos," he said with obvious excitement. "Audio. My wife's been taking those evening walks past your old house, you know, the one Jade's been showing to potential buyers. She heard some interesting conversations through the windows." The recording was scratchy, but clear enough. Jade's voice, talking to someone on the phone about hiding assets and making sure I couldn't access certain accounts. Then Kellan's voice, discussing something about insurance policies and making sure Asher doesn't cause problems. "Sounds like they're planning more than just a simple divorce," Gordon observed. "Thought you should know what you're dealing with." I thanked him and spent the rest of the morning listening to the recording repeatedly. They weren't just trying to humiliate me publicly. They were actively working to destroy me financially and legally. The gloves were officially off. At the factory that afternoon, I made my own phone call during break time. Ron Jeremy answered on the second ring. "I need to move quickly," I told him. "They're planning something and I want to get ahead of it." "What kind of timeline are we talking about?" Ron asked. "Yesterday would be good, tomorrow at the latest. I'll need documentation, evidence, financial records. I've got photos, audio recordings, and access to all our joint accounts. How fast can you freeze everything?" Ron's laugh was sharp and predatory. "Asher, my friend, you're about to learn why people pay me the big money. Give me 24 hours. That evening, Jade called for the first time since moving out. Her voice was strained, worried. "Asher, we need to talk. There are some financial issues we need to resolve before the divorce proceedings begin." "What kind of issues?" I asked, though I already knew. "The joint accounts, the house, my car payment. There seems to be some kind of freeze on everything." "Regret usually starts with small things," I said, repeating my earlier words. "But it grows quickly when you make poor choices." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you wanted excitement, Jade. You wanted danger and unpredictability. Congratulations. You're about to get more than you bargained for." I hung up before she could respond. Outside my window, I could see Gordon watering his garden, probably hoping to overhear another interesting conversation. This time I didn't mind the audience. The financial freeze was just the beginning. Within 48 hours, Ron Jeremy had locked down every joint asset we owned, citing suspected fraud and hidden income in Jade's divorce filing. Her new apartment rent bounced, her credit cards were suspended, and suddenly, her exciting new life required Kellan to foot all the bills. I learned about their reaction through Judy, who called me crying after Jade had an emotional breakdown in front of her. "Dad, Mom says you're trying to ruin her life. She can't even buy groceries now. Kellan's helping, but she's embarrassed about depending on him so much." "Your mother made her choice," I replied, feeling only slightly guilty about involving Judy in our war. "Actions have consequences. She'll figure it out." "But what about my college fund? She says you might have frozen that too." That stopped me cold. I hadn't touched Judy's education money, but apparently Jade was using our daughter's fears to build sympathy for her position. Using a 16-year-old girl as a weapon in our divorce was a new low, even for her. "Your college fund is safe," I assured Judy. "That money belongs to you, not to your mother or me. No matter what happens between us, your future is protected." "Really?" Mom said, "Your mother is scared and saying things that aren't true. Meet me for lunch tomorrow, and I'll show you the account statements." After hanging up, I realized Jade had just made a critical error. By lying to Judy about the college fund, she'd revealed how desperate she was becoming. Desperate people make mistakes, and mistakes create opportunities. The next day, I took Judy to lunch at the diner on Main Street, where half the town would see us together. I brought copies of her college account statements, showing a balance that had actually grown over the past month. "I've been adding extra money each week," I explained as she reviewed the paperwork. "Your mother's situation doesn't affect your education plans at all." Judy looked confused and relieved. "But Mom said you were being vindictive, trying to hurt her by hurting me." "Your mother is dealing with a lot of stress right now. Sometimes that makes people say things they don't mean." I was being generous, but Judy didn't need to hear how angry I was about being painted as a villain to my own daughter. "She also said you've been following them around town, taking pictures, trying to intimidate Kellan." "Have you seen me following anyone?" I asked. "Well, no, but Judy, I work 50 hours a week at the factory. When would I have time to stalk your mother and her boyfriend? Think about it logically." I could see doubt creeping into her expression. Good. Let her start questioning the stories she'd been told. That afternoon I received another anonymous email, this time with a different kind of information. Bank records showing large cash deposits into Kellan's accounts, far more than his consulting business could explain. The amounts were suspicious, the timing was regular, and the source was unclear. I forwarded everything to Ron Jeremy with a note. "Looks like Kellan has income he's not reporting. Might be relevant if Jade plans to depend on him financially." Ron's response was immediate. "Very relevant. This changes our strategy significantly. Can you get more details about his business operations?" I spent the evening researching Kellan Brooks online. His consulting company was registered in 3 different states. His social media showed a lifestyle that didn't match his declared income, and his art gallery downtown seemed to operate without regular hours or visible customers. The gallery was my next target. I drove past it several times over the following week, noting the patterns. Kellan showed up twice, both times with unmarked boxes that he carried inside quickly. No customers ever entered during my observations, but expensive cars occasionally parked behind the building for brief periods. On Friday evening, I parked across the street and waited. Around 9 o'clock, Kellan arrived with Jade and another man I didn't recognize. They unloaded several large paintings from a van, handling them with unusual care. Through my binoculars, I could see Jade examining the pieces with a magnifying glass, like she was authenticating them. That's when it clicked. Jade's expertise at the museum wasn't just being wasted on her boring job, it was being used for something much more profitable, and probably illegal. I took photos of the license plates, the paintings, and the people involved. Then I called Ron Jeremy's emergency number. I think my wife is authenticating forged artwork, I told him. And I have pictures. Jesus, Asher, how deep does this go? I'm starting to think deeper than just a midlife crisis affair. Can you contact someone at the FBI? Art forgery is federal, right? It is indeed. And if your wife is using her museum credentials to legitimize fake pieces, she's looking at serious federal charges. How serious? Prison serious. Years, not months. I sat in my truck for a long time after that call, watching Jade through the gallery windows as she worked on something that could destroy her life. Part of me felt guilty about what I was setting in motion. The larger part remembered her calling me boring and safe while planning to steal half of everything I'd worked for. She wanted excitement. She was about to get more than she could handle. The next morning, Jade called again. This time, her voice was different, still worried, but with an edge of anger. Asher, I know you're behind the financial problems. We need to meet and discuss this like adults. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Meet me at the Iron Tap tonight. 8 o'clock. Come alone. The Iron Tap was a dive bar on the wrong side of town, the kind of place where conversations couldn't be overheard and parking lots weren't well lit. It was also Kellan's regular hangout, according to the factory gossip. Will Kellan be there? I asked. This is between you and me. That's not an answer, Jade. Just be there, Asher, unless you're too scared to face me without your lawyer present. She hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone for several minutes, considering the invitation. It felt like a trap, but it might also be an opportunity to learn more about their plans. I called Ron Jeremy and told him about the meeting. Don't go, he advised immediately. Nothing good happens in dive bar parking lots at night. What if I wear a wire? Get them to admit something incriminating? What if they're planning to do more than talk? You've already hit them hard financially. They might be desperate enough to try something physical. Kellan's not that stupid. Too many people know about our problems. If something happened to me now, he'd be the obvious suspect. Famous last words, my friend. Famous last words. But I was already planning to go. Jade was right about one thing. I was tired of fighting through lawyers and financial maneuvers. It was time for a direct conversation about how this was going to end. And I had a feeling that after tonight, one way or another, it would be over. The Iron Tap looked exactly like the kind of place where bad decisions were made. Neon beer signs flickered in grimy windows, and the parking lot was full of pickup trucks and motorcycles that had seen better decades. I arrived 15 minutes early and parked where I could see both entrances. Jade showed up at exactly 8 o'clock, driving Kellan's red SUV. She'd replaced his slashed tires, I noticed. She walked into the bar alone, but I spotted Kellan's motorcycle parked behind the building. So much for coming alone. I waited another 5 minutes, then followed her inside. The bar was dimly lit and smelled like cigarettes and disappointment. Jade sat in a corner booth, looking out of place in her clean clothes and nervous expression. You came, she said, as I slid into the seat across from her. You asked me to. Where's Kellan? He's not here. His bike is parked out back. She looked annoyed at being caught in another lie. Fine, he's here, but he's staying out of this unless you make trouble. Define trouble. You know what you're doing, Asher. The financial freeze, the lawyers, whatever else you're planning, it needs to stop. I signaled the bartender for a beer and studied my wife's face. She looked tired, stressed, older than I remembered. The excitement she'd been chasing was wearing her down. You wanted a divorce, I said finally. I'm giving you one. What's the problem? The problem is, you're trying to destroy me in the process. I can't access my own money, my credit is ruined, and now there are people asking questions about my work at the museum. What kind of questions? You know what kind. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Federal agents visited the museum yesterday. They wanted to see authentication records for several pieces I'd worked on recently. I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was celebrating. The FBI had moved faster than I'd expected. "That sounds serious," I said. "Don't pretend you don't know what's happening. You've been watching us, taking pictures, gathering evidence. What do you want?" "I want the truth, Jade. About the affair, about the financial planning, about whatever illegal business you and Kellan are running through that gallery." Her face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Art forgery is a federal offense. Using your museum credentials to authenticate fake pieces makes it worse. How long has this been going on?" "You're insane." "Am I?" "Then explain the cash deposits in Kellan's accounts. Explain why you were examining paintings in his gallery last week. Explain why federal agents are suddenly interested in your authentication work." Jade stood up abruptly. "This conversation is over." "Sit down," I said quietly. "We're not finished." "Yes, we are." She started to walk away, then turned back. "You think you're so smart, Asher. You think you figured everything out, but you have no idea what you're dealing with. Enlighten me." "Kellan isn't just some guy I met at the gym. He has connections, resources, friends who don't appreciate being investigated by federal agents. You've made this personal for people who take that very seriously. Is that a threat?" "It's a warning. Back off, or face the consequences." She walked out without looking back. I finished my beer slowly, thinking about what she'd just revealed. Kellan wasn't just running a small-time art forgery operation. He was connected to something larger, more dangerous, and I'd just painted a target on my back. I was halfway to my truck when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to see Kellan emerging from the shadows near his motorcycle, accompanied by a man I didn't recognize. The stranger was shorter than Kellan, but moved like someone comfortable with violence. "Asher," Kellan called out. "Hold up a minute." I kept walking toward my truck, keys already in my hand. "Nothing to discuss, Kellan." "I think there is." His voice was closer now. "You've been causing problems for people who don't like problems." I reached my truck and turned to face them. The stranger had circled around to block my driver's side door. This wasn't going to be a conversation. "You must be Felix," I said to the stranger, remembering the name from one of the recorded conversations. "Jade mentioned you." Felix looked surprised that I knew his name. "Good. Let them wonder what else I knew." "Here's how this works," Kellan said, stepping closer. "You're going to call off the federal investigation, unfreeze the accounts, and disappear from our lives. In return, we don't make your life very unpleasant." "And if I refuse?" "Then Felix here explains the situation in terms you'll understand better." Felix cracked his knuckles and smiled. He was missing 2 teeth and had scars on his hands that suggested a history of violence. I looked around the parking lot. No witnesses, no security cameras, no help coming. Just me, 2 men with criminal connections, and a lot of empty space. "You know what's funny?" I said, reaching slowly into my jacket pocket. "Jade called me boring and predictable for 20 years, said I never surprised her." "What's your point?" Kellan asked. "My point is that boring men sometimes have boring hobbies." I pulled out my phone and held it up so they could see the screen, like recording conversations in parking lots. The phone showed an active recording app, running for the past 10 minutes. Every word of their threats was documented. "You've been recording us?" Felix snarled. "I've been recording everything for weeks. Every threat, every illegal business discussion, every federal crime you've committed. It's all backed up to cloud storage that my lawyer can access remotely." Kellan's confident expression was cracking. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Want to test that theory? Go ahead and have Felix explain things to me. See how well that works out when the recording gets played in federal court." Felix looked at Kellan uncertainly. This wasn't going according to their plan. "Here's my counteroffer," I continued. "You leave me alone, and I might consider not sharing the recordings with the FBI. You threaten me again, and I make sure you both get to experience the federal prison system firsthand." "This isn't over," Kellan said, but he was already backing away. "Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet." They retreated to Kellan's motorcycle and roared off into the night. I stood in the parking lot for several minutes, letting my hands stop shaking. The recording app on my phone was real, and it had captured everything. But I'd just escalated a financial dispute into something much more dangerous. When I got home, I found a message from Ron Jeremy on my answering machine. "Call me immediately. We have a problem." I dialed his number, and he answered before the first ring finished. "Asher, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for hours." "Meeting with Jade. What's wrong?" "The FBI contacted me this afternoon. They want to interview you about your wife's activities. Apparently, the art forgery investigation is part of something much larger." "How much larger?" "International smuggling, money laundering, possibly terrorism financing. Your wife and her boyfriend aren't small-time criminals, Asher. They're part of a network that the federal government has been tracking for months." I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. "What does that mean for me?" "It means you're either a witness or a suspect, depending on how much they think you knew about your wife's activities. It also means you're in serious danger if Kellan's associates think you're cooperating with federal agents. They already know I am. I just told them so in a parking lot." "Jesus Christ, Asher, what were you thinking?" "I was thinking I could handle my own divorce. Apparently I was wrong." "Pack a bag," Ron said. "The FBI wants to relocate you to a safe house until this investigation is complete. They're picking you up tomorrow morning." "What about my job, my house, Judy?" "Your job will understand. Your house will be monitored. And your daughter." He paused. "Your daughter is with your wife, who is about to be arrested on federal charges. That's going to be complicated." I hung up the phone and looked around my empty house. 24 hours ago, I'd thought I was fighting a simple divorce battle. Now I was apparently a federal witness in an international criminal investigation. Jade had been right about one thing. I'd had no idea what I was dealing with, but neither had she. And tomorrow, we were both going to learn just how far out of our depth we'd gotten. The FBI arrived at dawn in unmarked cars that fooled no one. Agent Sarah Mitchell was a serious woman in her 40s who spoke in clipped sentences and never smiled. Her partner, Agent David Park, looked young enough to be my son, but carried himself like someone who'd seen too much. "Mr. Trevan, we need to discuss your wife's activities and your knowledge of them," Agent Mitchell said as we sat in my living room. "I know she's been authenticating artwork for Kellan Brooks. I suspect it's forged. Beyond that, I'm just a factory worker trying to get divorced." "Your wife has been using her museum credentials to legitimize stolen artwork worth over $4 million, Agent Park said. "The pieces were taken from private collections and museums across Europe, then sold to American buyers through Brooks Gallery. Stolen, not forged. Both. Some were stolen originals, others were high-quality forgeries of pieces that couldn't be stolen easily. Your wife's authentication made both types appear legitimate to buyers." Agent Mitchell opened a folder and showed me photographs of Jade examining paintings in Kellan's gallery. "These were taken 3 weeks ago. Your wife is clearly aware that she's handling stolen property." I studied the photos, feeling sick. Jade looked focused and professional, like she was doing important work rather than committing federal crimes. "What happens to her now?" I asked. "She's been arrested along with Brooks and 3 other members of the network. She's looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison unless she cooperates fully with our investigation." "And if she cooperates?" "Maybe 5 to 7 years, depending on how valuable her information proves to be." Agent Park leaned forward. "Mr. Trevan, we believe your wife may have been planning to implicate you in these crimes. We found emails discussing ways to make it appear that you were aware of and profiting from the stolen artwork sales." "That's impossible. I never knew anything about it." "We believe you, but your wife was building a case to claim you were a willing participant. probably to reduce her own sentence by shifting blame. The betrayal cut deeper than anything she'd done before. Not only had she been committing federal crimes, she'd been planning to frame me for them. "There's something else," Agent Mitchell said. "Brooks has connections to a larger criminal organization. When you confronted them last night, you put yourself in serious danger. These people have eliminated witnesses before." "Eliminated?" "Permanently. We're relocating you to a federal safe house until the trials are complete. It's not optional." I spent the next hour packing a single suitcase while federal agents secured my house and arranged for my absence from work. The safe house was a cabin in rural Montana, 3 hours from the nearest town and surrounded by wilderness. For 2 weeks, I lived like a hermit, reading books and watching satellite television while federal marshals stood guard outside. Agent Mitchell called twice a week with updates on the investigation. "Your wife is cooperating," she told me during the 3rd week. "She's provided evidence against Brooks and his associates. Her sentence will probably be reduced to 5 years. What about Judy? Your daughter is staying with your wife's sister until the situation stabilizes. She's been told that her mother is helping with a federal investigation, not that she's been arrested. She's going to find out eventually. Yes, but hopefully not until after the trials are complete." On a Thursday morning in my 4th week at the safe house, Agent Mitchell called with urgent news. "We have a problem. Someone leaked your location to Brooks Associates. A man named Felix Roard was spotted in the area yesterday. We're moving you immediately." "Where?" "Somewhere safer. Pack quickly." The new location was a federal facility in Nevada, more like a minimum security prison than a safe house. I shared meals with other federal witnesses, all of us waiting for trials that would determine our futures. It was there that I learned the full scope of what Jade and Kellan had been involved in. The stolen artwork was just one part of an international network that smuggled everything from drugs to weapons to classified information. Kellan had been selling defense blueprints stolen from his consulting clients to foreign buyers. "Your wife claims she didn't know about the defense contracts," Agent Mitchell told me during one of her visits, "but we have evidence that she helped authenticate documents related to those sales." "What kind of documents?" "Military specifications, weapons designs, classified research data. Someone with her expertise was needed to verify that stolen documents were genuine before they were sold. The woman I'd been married to for 20 years had been committing espionage. It was almost impossible to believe." "How long was this going on?" I asked. "At least 2 years, possibly longer. The affair with Brooks was probably part of his recruitment strategy. He targeted her specifically because of her authentication skills. So the whole thing was fake? Her feelings for him, the excitement, all of it? Probably. Brooks has used romantic relationships to recruit assets before. Your wife was valuable to him professionally, not personally." I should have felt vindicated, knowing that Jade had been manipulated rather than genuinely choosing someone else. Instead, I felt hollow. Everything about our marriage's end had been built on lies and criminal activity. The trials began 6 months later. I testified about what I'd observed and recorded, helping to convict Kellan Brooks and his network of associates. Felix Roard received 22 years for conspiracy and attempted witness intimidation. Kellan got 25 years for espionage, theft, and money laundering. Jade received 7 years after her cooperation helped convict 2 other members of the network. During her sentencing hearing, she looked across the courtroom at me with an expression I couldn't read. Regret, maybe, or just exhaustion. I never spoke to her again. After the trials, the federal government relocated me permanently to a small town in Oregon. They provided a new identity, a job at a local manufacturing plant, and enough money to start over. Judy, now 18, chose to attend college on the East Coast rather than maintain contact with either of her parents. I understood her decision. Our family had been destroyed by choices neither of us had made, and sometimes the only way to heal is to leave everything behind. On my first anniversary in Oregon, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a newspaper clipping about Jade's imprisonment and a handwritten note. "This is how regret usually ends." I never found out who sent it, but I kept the note as a reminder of how quickly a safe, boring life can become something else entirely. Jade had wanted excitement and danger. She'd gotten both, along with federal prison and the destruction of everything she'd claimed to value. I'd wanted revenge for her betrayal. I'd gotten that too, though not in any way I could have planned or predicted. Sometimes when people trade in their lives for something they think will be better, they discover that what they had wasn't so bad after all. But by then, it's usually too late to go back. Regret, as I'd told Jade, usually starts small, but it can grow into something that consumes everything you thought you knew about your life. In the end, she'd been right about one thing. I wasn't exciting or dangerous. I was just a man who'd been pushed too far and had the patience to wait for justice to find its own way. That turned out to be enough.